What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Record. I'm RJ Starcevic here with Benjamin Branscombe, my co-host, and we're also here with Mr. Charles Krall, our great guest today. How are you today, man?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
It's a wonderful day, another day in paradise, as you said. We're getting ready for another ARCA Menards series season. This off season, I feel like it feels like it's long because you're like, man, I miss racing, but it goes by so quick. We're like 40 days away from Daytona weekend. We got the ARCA test coming up. I mean, how have you been enjoying the off season?
Well, it goes by really quick, RJ. We ended our season last year, like the first week of November, at Phoenix Raceway with the ARCA West finale, and you get a couple of weeks there to kind of decompress, and then you've got Thanksgiving, and and I had some time saved up to take a little vacation time. So I really was off work much of the month of December, but you've got the PRI trade show in there, and then you got the Christmas holiday, and then you got New Year's, and before you know it, it's time to get right back at it. And we head to Daytona next week for our annual pre-race practice session down there. We've got a ton of cars registered, a ton of drivers already registered. I expect that entry list will be out early next week, so I'm not going to spill the beans on any of those combinations. But yeah, we've had a lot of interest from a lot of teams, a lot of drivers, and yeah, I'm really excited to get the season started. We've had a lot of momentum the last couple of years. There's going to be some changes here in 2023 that are going to be pretty evident here in the next several weeks. But I think you're going to see a resurgence, not only with a continued resurgence with the West Series, but I think you're going to see that in the East for 2023. And I absolutely have a very strong feeling that both of those series are going to just be way healthier than they have been in the past. But I think you're going to see that carry over in some really healthy car counts in the ARCA Menard series as well.
Yeah, I'm
Awesome.
looking forward to it, man. And I did have one more question as well to kick us off here. I know we're talking about ARCA East and West, and the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to next year is every ARCA national race is going to be carried on a Fox Sports channel. I think that is
Yeah.
amazing for the series. People aren't wondering where the race is going to be. They're all going to be on either, Fox FS1 or FS2. I think that is really, really cool for obviously two big ARCA Menards fans here and me and Ben. How did that deal all come together, and what does something like that mean for the series?
Well, first and foremost, before we talk about that, I would be remiss if we didn't thank all of our friends over at MAV TV for all of the
Yes.
dedication and the hard work that they've put in the last couple few years. Just a really great team to work with, and those folks. There's a lot of similarities there between what we do here on a day-to-day basis and what they do. We're a pretty small, tight ship here at ARCA. We've got 10 full-time employees. We're a pretty tight, nimble little company, and they're the same way over there at MAV TV. They don't have, the big budget and the big resources, but they had a very dedicated group of people that showed up to the racetrack every week and put those shows on. And even though they didn't have the biggest team, you felt like you were watching a broadcast of the exact same quality that you would get on any other network. And I know they took a lot of pride in that, and we took a lot of pride in that. And while we are really, really happy to have all 20 races on the Fox family of networks here in 23, we are a little bummed that we're not going to be able to work with those guys at MAV. We built some really good relationships with those folks, and we absolutely wish them nothing but the best here going forward. And we are a very firm believer in not burning bridges, and we don't know where the future will take us. Maybe there's some way that relationship is rekindled down the road, but yeah, we are definitely excited to be on that Fox family of networks for 2023. It's terrific. Again, taking nothing away from our friends over there at MAV, but FS2 is in 30 million more homes than MAV TV is, and when you look at those numbers, it's just on a business sense, it makes a lot of sense. And I wasn't a part of those negotiations, to make that happen. That's way above my pay grade, guys. But, I do know that it was a very long process to make it happen. We've got some great people in the NASCAR, broadcast department that negotiate those deals and keep us abreast of what's going on. Ben Baker and his group, they really do. They take care of us. They're great people, great folks to work with and have in your corner. And they've been working on this for a while, and to see it come to fruition is great. It's great news for us, for our partners, Menards and General Tire, and all of our vendor partners and all of the series, supporting, the companies that support us each and every week. It's fantastic for them. It's great for our teams. There's a lot of teams out there that said, this is something that we can, take to potential sponsors and help close deals. And I think we're going to see that as the year goes on, that, we'll see some growth in some of those short track races that, we've had some thin car counts the last couple of years. There's no secret, there's no denying that. But I think we'll see some growth at some of those short track races because, we've got a much bigger potential audience that's able to watch that. And that's what those companies are looking for. So it's great. It's exciting. Can't wait to get to Daytona and kick it off. And, 60th time that we will have raced at Daytona coming up. I can't believe it. I'm a big, lover of the history of the sport. And, I've been around a long time. I wasn't around for those early races down there at Daytona, but I can remember, as a kid, hearing, about some of those races in the early 80s and mid 80s down there at Daytona. And, I just can't believe that it's the 60th time the ARCA Menard series will race at Daytona coming up. And that's a pretty big milestone. So it's going to be a great season, guys. I'm really excited. I keep saying I'm excited. I wish there was another way to put it, but I am. I'm looking forward to getting it rolling. And, I hope everybody can join us there in person. And if not, they can tune in on FS1 coming up on February 18th.
Excited is the best way to put it. I mean, you've talked about it, the kind of the hype that's going into it with the new TV deal and hopefully a bigger car count, obviously, hopefully bringing in money in and stuff like that. But even just, I've talked about it with RJ and I've talked about it with several people. The hype that is around ARCA is kind of interesting because a lot of people slept on ARCA last season that I've talked to in my friends group that I've explained to them. This was one of the craziest championship battles I think I've ever seen in the time that I've been a race fan. So the fact that you're building momentum, like you're coming off of a season that had really great competitive racing, had a really tense championship battle, had three guys going at it basically week in, week out, and then an incredibly tense owners points battle that we saw come to a head at Toledo, which was insane in of itself. So like there's so much excitement around ARCA, and 2023 I feel like will be a big year. You brought up the options or the ability for teams to be really excited about the TV deal. I think even just for the tracks, that's a huge opportunity, to be able to have Elko or Berlin or Salem or even Toledo be featured on a cable TV broadcast live is kind of crazy. Like we were at Salem last year and MAF TV, like we've talked about, they did a great job, but the ability to have, I'm guessing Fox Sports will have a larger crew there and more time spent there. That's just kind of crazy for me to sit there and to think about. So excited is the best way to put it, honestly.
Back when I was, a younger guy and I didn't really understand how the business of this all worked, I would be at a truck series race and I would bump into the TV crew and I'd be like, man, you guys don't know what you're missing. You gotta come to DuQuoin and you gotta come to Springfield and you gotta come to Salem, man. You guys you're missing it. And they would always be like, well, yeah, we want to, we gotta find a way to pay for it to get there. This costs money. And I think there are a lot of people who have not been exposed to ARCA at a place like Salem or a place like Springfield or DuQuoin or even Elko, which is just a wonderful event. I'm excited to get all those races on television on a more national platform and really put a spotlight on those events. It's going to be huge. People talk about wanting more short track racing and want more dirt track racing. Well, we've been doing that for 40 years now. We've been racing at Springfield and DuQuoin since 1983. So you know, it is. It's going to be really cool to be able to put that spotlight, you know, very brightly on those events, and you know, continue to put, you know, races like Daytona and Talladega and Watkins Glen and Michigan, you know, just other events that, you know, we've had on the schedule for many, many years that always get a great audience. You know, I think to be able to carry that, you know, that audience that we get at Daytona into Talladega, and then Talladega to Kansas, and then Kansas to Elko, you know, it's going to be big. So, you know, there's really no downside to it, Ben. And you know, it is. I think it's something that's going to help us, you know, get that car count back up where we would like it to be, and where the fans would like it to be, and you know, continue to put on that type of racing that we've been known for now for 70 plus years. You know, I'm a fan regardless, man. You know, I remember, you know, going to some of those races during the pandemic year where we had, you know, 12 cars, and I still found a way to enjoy those races, you know. But you know, we want to get back to, you know, to those full fields that everybody remembers back in the glory days, and I don't think we're all that far off. I really don't. I think we've got a good amount of momentum here through 2022, and I think we're going to carry it on into next season. And you know, I don't want people to be sleeping on this series. You know, there, even with those lighter car counts, we've had some really good races, man, and we've had a really good championship battle. And like you alluded to there, you know, it was pretty tense there at Toledo. You know, I mean, you know, the situation with Nick Sanchez having an engine problem early in the day, and kind of racing right around that bumping point where Daniel was going to be able to make a run at it, and then just when it looked like Daniel was going to get it going, he had problems. And you know, while that locked the championship up for Nick, then you started paying attention to the owners championship, and we all know what happened there. It boiled over on the racetrack, it boiled over off the racetrack afterwards. And you know, it's really competitive here, man. And you know, these teams don't have the big budgets that the Cup teams do, or even the Truck Series teams do, but they want it just as bad. And those emotions boil over from time to time. And you know, obviously we don't want people fighting. It's never good, but you know, it just goes to prove, you know, how much this means to those folks. You know, it is. It's important to them. It's important to us. And you know, the beneficiary of it all are the race fans who get to come out and see a good, exciting race.
For sure.
The schedule is so diverse, like kind of what you were noting too, and that's what I think is exciting, that a lot more people are going to get to see this year. I mean, we got dirt races on the schedule at fairgrounds, racetracks. We got all sorts of road courses. The short tracks are like my personal favorite. Like the diversity of the ARCA schedule, I think is so cool. I mean, the West and East is even different as well, but just on the national schedule that we're going to get to see, viewers are going to get to see on the Fox Sports family of networks, all these great tracks. I mean, Salem and Toledo to end the year. I think the finale at Toledo is like amazing. We're going to get to all see that kind of on a more national scale. Like the diversity of the schedule is amazing in my opinion. I'm sure you can kind of relate to that and feel the same way.
Yeah, so I've always loved the diversity of the ARCA schedule. You know, I even as a fan when I was, you know, in college, you know, I would go to some of those short track races, you know, whether it was Toledo or Flat Rock or you know, whatever, and then drive up to Michigan and watch the races up there, and drive down to Kentucky and watch the races there. You know, it was just awesome to see some of those racetracks that are on the schedule year in and year out. And you know, I think we're going to see a lot of that in the East and the West here in coming years. You know, having Flat Rock back on the East schedule is just phenomenal. I think that's going to be great. You know, a lot of teams, a lot of even former drivers, you know, saying, "Hey, we're going to come out of retirement and come run that race." You know, I hope they do. It'd be great. You know, I really do love just the tighter the racetrack, the better the action to me. You know, I love those bull rings. And you know, we've got a couple new additions to the West schedule this year with Madera and Shasta coming back onto the series schedules out there. And you know, that's in addition to Irwindale and Kern County and All-American, and you know, and of course the combination race with the ARCA Menard series at Phoenix, the finale at Phoenix, couple of road courses. You know, even the West series has a very diverse schedule. So Yeah, I love it. I think we've got something like 35 races all told between between the three series, and my plan is to work them all. I don't know that I'll be able to be actually on site at all of them, but I'm going to work them all, man. And I'm a really lucky guy to be able to do all those things and participate in every one of those races in some form or fashion. So yeah, I'm chomping at the bit, man. I can't wait to get down to Daytona for that pre-race practice and start getting back in the swing of things. And it is just as a race fan, this is a tough time of the year, man, because there's not a lot going on, but we're right on the verge of it.
I want to take it back though. You made the comment of you're hopefully going to be working every race. The first time I met you was still one of the craziest moments because I remember we were at Salem. We were in the booth, and the race had just wrapped up, and I'm doing my thing, and you were talking to someone. It wasn't me, but it was someone else. And you're like, "Yeah, I got to go drive 2 hours to this hotel because I have to call this West race now."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wait a minute." Wait, what? I was so confused. Yeah. And then I tuned in that night, and you were calling the West race. So yeah, you're at you have your hand in every single part of it from beginning to
right. And like I said, man, I'm really lucky to be able to do that. I love being, at the racetrack. And I wish I could literally be at all 35 of them. It's just impossible to do physically when you've got multiple races on the same weekend. But yeah, man, I mean, it's a really wacky thing to work a race on the East Coast and then put the period on that one and then find a place to set up your little mobile broadcast studio and call a race 3 time zones away. I'll tell you, one of my favorite stories of 2022 was it's happened a couple of times actually. We had our race at Talladega in April, and as soon as that race was over, I found a spot in the media center there and set up and called the race from Kern County later on that night. So 2 races in one day, that's a treat. Did the same thing at Iowa Speedway, but it was kind of reversed. We did the West race at Sonoma during the day, and then the ARCA Menard Series race at night. But in August, we actually had 3 races in 3 days. Watkins Glen in New York.
Yep.
I was actually at Watkins, at the racetrack in Watkins Glen. Drove home to Toledo and did the race. I believe that's was All American. No, it wasn't All American. I forget which race it was. Might have been. No, All American's in October. It was a West Coast short track race on Saturday night, and it didn't start till like 10 o'clock. So it's going to be a long day. As soon as that race is over, you catch a couple hours of sleep, then you hop in the car and you drive 7 hours to go to Springfield, Illinois for Sunday. So, you have 3 races, 3 days, 3 different states, 3 different time zones, and somehow you find a way to do them all. So it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And, like I said, I'm just the lucky guy who gets to do it all.
Yeah, that's that schedule. I love that portion of the schedule where they have because I was just looking at it. I remember we have the Friday race at Watkins Glen, and then usually an ARCA West race is thrown in the middle of those two, to where then we end up at the State Fairgrounds in Illinois on Sunday. I think that part of the schedule is really fun, and like over the years, because that's been a thing. Like it's not like totally new. It's been a thing in the schedule for a while. Have you made it out to both of those like every year?
So for a couple of years, it was Michigan on Friday and then Springfield on Sunday, which was a little bit easier on us because we're 45 minutes from Michigan. So Watkins Glen is about 6 hours from the ARCA home base. So a lot of our officials and our teams will go straight from Watkins Glen down to Springfield, which it's about 12 hours. And that would be really, really easy for a guy like me, but I've got to make that pit stop in Toledo to squeeze that extra race in on Saturday. But I can't imagine myself doing that 4 or 5 years ago. It's not even something that I thought would ever happen, but here we are. And the one thing the pandemic kind of taught everybody in sports broadcasting is that you don't necessarily have to be on site to do a really solid broadcast. And we've got a great crew out west. JR Becerra and his team just do a great job producing those. And I get to sit in the comfort of my office at home many weeks and do those races remotely, which makes it a lot easier, and it's a lot more cost effective to do it that way, honestly. But there's nothing like being at the racetrack and getting the chance to see what happens in practice and qualifying and talk with the drivers, the crew chiefs, and the teams. But that like I said, the one thing we all learned in that pandemic is we can do it remotely. There's technology is in place to make it happen, and it's really easy to do. And I mean, here we are. We're all three different places right now. We're having a conversation. It's not something that an old guy like me thought would be possible when I was your age.
RJ, I don't know if you have anything planned, but I wanted to shift gears a little bit, and I kind of told Charles about this earlier. So something we try and do is we kind of try and talk to our guests a little bit about themselves. So, Charlie, I want you to kind of take us through, I guess, a normal day in your life, what that looks like, as normal as it can be.
So a normal day in my life.
Actually, let's rewind and say, tell people what you do for work exactly. Let's start there.
So I am the communications manager here for ARCA. So a normal day in my life is, working on a little bit of website content. I don't do that as much as I did in the past. We've got a wonderful team down there in Charlotte with the NASCAR Digital Media Group who manages our website and our social media feeds and whatnot. But I do a little bit of content for the website every now and then. So I've done a couple of pieces leading up to our pre-race practice at Daytona here in the past couple of days. Working on some media availability stuff at the pre-race practice coming up next week. Got a couple of announcements that are going to be made here in the next 7 days or so that I think are worthy of a media availability during that pre-race practice session down there at Daytona. So we're working on putting that in place. That's really what my day-to-day is. We have a wonderful collection of VHS videotapes that date back to probably 1979. I'm going to guess that I'm working on trying to, convert some of those to DVD in digital, so we can share those on some of our digital platforms here throughout the season. That's part of what I do on a day-to-day basis, and really just kind of interface with our broadcast partners and making sure that they have everything that they need information wise, stats wise, and just help with anything we need inside the building here, whether it's a competition project or a marketing project or a communications project, just making sure that I can help any way that I can. I like to think that I'm a team player, and I do. I really do care about this company and this organization. My grandparents worked for the Markhams back in the 60s and the 70s. That's how I got, my start in racing, was coming to Flat Rock Speedway when I was a kid, with my grandparents. It's something that matters a lot to me. And I want to help any way that I can and make sure that, we get everything done that we need to get done, heading into these races. So it might not be the most glamorous, job in the world there, Ben, but it's a lot of fun for me. And like I said earlier, I just think I'm the luckiest guy in the world to be able to do it.
No, that's awesome. I know, like, I remember, again, going back to Salem, like, it felt like you were doing 18 different jobs at once. And I was just standing there just being in shock and awe of, this man is just doing everything right now, but he's getting it done. So
we get it done, man.
I can respect it.
There's a lot of balls in the air on race day. And, we try to make sure they don't hit the ground very often. And occasionally they do, it's bound to happen. But, it's just how I look at it, man. You got to get one thing done and then move on to the next. Then you move on to the next and you move on to the next. And while you might have in your head, you might have a schedule of, we want to do it in this order. It doesn't always work out that way. So you have to be adaptable. You have to be willing to and able to, manage a bunch of different things at the same time, and kind of prioritize what needs to get done when. And, unfortunately, at some point in time, those race cars are going onto the racetrack at a specific time, whether you're ready or not. So, yeah, you've got to get all that stuff done, and you got to be smart with how you use your time. And, it can be pretty laid back, but, it also can be pretty intense from time to time. And, like I said, we are a really tight ship here in the ARCA Menard series, but, everybody here, we care a lot about this organization. We care a lot about its present. We care a lot about its history, and we care a lot about its future. We want to be successful, and we work hard and enjoy what we do, and I think that combination of factors, it makes it maybe seem like it's not really difficult, but when you love your job, it's not really a job, right?
So I want to also ask, so kind of talk a little bit, if you want to, and if you're able to, about kind of just how you got started with ARCA. You said you grew up around Flat Rock Speedway and your grandparents had the connection, but talk about kind of this, like, I assume the way you've talked, you've been through college, got your degree, and worked in racing most of your life. I want to ask about like the time you've worked in racing, and I want to specifically ask because and again, I'm kind of going based off of the limited knowledge that I have on your history, but I tweeted at you recently because you've been tweeting some older photos out of you at, I assume, a truck series race in the media center with a laptop that's about 4 inches thick one way. And I was curious on that as well. So kind of just talk about the entire history of you covering racing, if you want.
Sure thing. So I started coming to the racetrack when I was a kid with my grandparents. They did the timing and scoring at Flat Rock and Toledo Speedways when I was actually before I was even born. But when I was a kid, and I would come with them and just kind of sit in the corner and watch the races. And they retired and moved down to North Carolina when I was probably about 12 years old. So, but my first job ever, the first thing I ever got paid to do in my life was selling ARCA yearbooks when I was 10 years old. My boss now, Ron Drager, paid me a $5 bill out of his pocket to sell those ARCA yearbooks. And that was literally the first job I ever had. So this has always been, near and dear to my heart. Even after my grandparents moved, I still would go to Flat Rock Speedway and Toledo Speedway. And, I was very fortunate to be the track announcer at Toledo Speedway back in 1998. That was my first real full job in racing, and met, not that I didn't meet him, I had already known him, but kind of refreshed my relationship with Jerry Cook, who was at that point in time was the crew chief at a team called Sealmaster Racing in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, well, NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series now. That team's now known as Thor Sport Racing, and I had the opportunity to come and work there kind of as their PR guy, their sponsor guy, and worked there for a couple of years. And then around the year 2000, 2001 actually was the year. I didn't really have a full-time gig at that point, but I was asked by Amy East, who was one of the pit reporters for ESPN's Truck Series coverage, if I would come to all of the races and be her pit spotter, kind of the guy who gathers all of the information from the various teams up and down pit road. And I was like, oh, heck yeah, I'll do that. And was really fortunate to be able to work with Amy for the last 2 years of ESPN's contract. And she actually was married to Terry Cook there in, I believe, 2001. And right about that time, I still wanted to work as her pit spotter, but I had the opportunity to go work for TruckSeries.com and do all of their at-track reporting. We did live qualifying. We called it Trackside Live, which was kind of like live updates throughout the day. All you had to do was open your browser and leave it up, and the feed would kind of refresh itself. Every time I posted an update, it would, refresh itself. And that's kind of what Twitter is now. We were kind of doing, that micro blogging, 10 years before Twitter was even a thing. And it was so cool, man. We would just anything that happened at the racetrack, we would update it. you know, if someone was changing an engine, or, you know, someone was making a gear change, or, you know, practice was going on and somebody spun out coming out of turn 2 and backed it into the fence, you know, were they going to go to a backup truck, or, you know, anything. And we took tons of pictures and did audio interviews, and we didn't quite have the capability of taking video with these things just yet, but if we were able to do that, we would have done it. You know, it was I like to think it was way ahead of its time. You know, Steve Keller and Jay Daniels and myself, and we had some photographers that we worked with, and, you know, my friend Tim Stevens was up on the roof as a spotter, and, you know, if he saw something, he was, you know, he had this little device, an AOL instant messenger device, that he would send me an instant message on, you know, AOL instant messenger. And, you know, it's just, it was so cool to be able to do those things. And that was that laptop that you saw, and it was probably a 4 or 5 pound, you know, it's a heavy piece of equipment back in the day, but we had so much fun doing it. And you know, when that deal kind of came to an end, I was, you know, fortunate enough to kind of tag on as the PR manager over at Mansfield Motorsports Park. And, you know, of course, we had the truck series race there for a couple of years back then. And it was at Mansfield that I actually did a pre-race interview with a guy named DC Bash. He was out of Fremont, Ohio, and he had a local racing show, and he was there kind of covering the pre-race. And I did an interview with him, and he said, "Man, you're really good at this stuff. Have you ever thought about calling, you know, doing racing, you know, calling a race?" And I said, I haven't thought about it, but I'd love to, you know, so if you ever need me, just let me know. And he called me the next weekend, you know, and we went off and did a bunch of races on the radio, and that kind of transitioned into doing ARCA races on the radio. And eventually, you know, the terrestrial radio component kind of faded away, but we did internet broadcasts on the ARCA website. I think I did a count the other day, some form or fashion. I've broadcast like 123 different ARCA races, whether it was, you know, ARCA Menard Series East or West. And it's been on terrestrial radio, internet radio, television, live streaming, you know, every different type of broadcast format you can think of. And I've been, like I said, really lucky to be able to do that over the years. And I think I've done another probably 30 or 40, you know, races as the PA announcer at these various racetracks all around the country too. So, you know, I was the track PA announcer up at Michigan International Speedway from 2012 to 2018. I'm fortunate enough to do some of that down at Kentucky Speedway as well. You know, on their ARCA and Xfinity Series weekends that they used to have there in September. So just a guy who, you know, I suppose I've been around racing my whole life, but I always kind of consider myself to be a race fan more than anything. And I'm just a guy who is lucky enough to transition as a race fan to someone who works here full time in the industry. And I'm just really, really lucky to be able to do it.
Yeah, no, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you and talk about that, was just because you have such a unique story and unique experience. Like we've talked to drivers and crew members and stuff on the show before, and you know, I feel like a lot of fans and a lot of people that watch the sport tend to just kind of get not locked into that mindset of that's all they can do, but that's kind of like the biggest job. But like for you, I don't know if you've ever set foot in a race car or not, but you've had this incredible career in racing. So
I used to be the monkey who held the brakes for pit stop practice at Thorsport. So that's the only time I've ever been in a race car, was holding the brakes for pit stop practice. But fun, you know, it's just not anything that I ever, you know, really wanted to do. And my son, I've got a 14-year-old son who has started racing on the dirt track here outside of town with my stepfather over the course of the summer. I think he'd really like the opportunity to do some of that. You know, unfortunately, Dad doesn't have the deep checkbook that I think it's going to take to get him very far up the ladder. But you know, he's already made it a lot farther than I ever thought that he would, particularly as a 14-year-old. So, you know, I think, you know, if I was going to give advice to anybody on how to do it, is just don't ever give up on that dream, man. You know, I didn't have a plan. You know, I think if you look at the roadmap, you know, for how I got here, look at it and you'd say, oh, that's crazy. You know, I didn't. I never really had a plan. I don't think I've ever had a job interview to get to this level. You know, it's just crazy. But you know, I think if you go out and meet people and meet as many people as you can and create relationships and build your network and find a way to say yes to whatever opportunity is in front of you. I mean, I think that's the most important part is, you know, once you get that network in place, people are going to call you. And if you tell them no, they're going to remember that. And you know, if you find a way to do it, they're going to remember it. And if you do a good job, they're going to keep calling you. And you know, I think that's really important is meeting the right people and meet as many people as you can and find a way to say yes.
Yeah, that's what I have. Those conversations I have with people, like friends that don't know much of the racing industry. And when I say, they're like, what do you do with racing? I'm like, I just do a bunch of races. They're like, you drive? And I was like, no, but they're like, you drive race cars? You drive all that? And I was like, no, but let me tell you about the awesome stuff that I get to do on a regular
Right.
basis at the racetracks. I mean, it's just so cool. The things that, you know, all three of us, and especially your story, Charlie, like, of what you're able to do at the racetrack, what you have done. It's so cool. Racing is such a cool thing. And what I think is so awesome about it is that there's so many different things you can do in the racing industry. And I know, like, I've learned when you start out, it's tough. You want to take every opportunity you can, make connections, make relationships. But in the end, you know, it can pay off for sure. I mean, there's so many different things you can do, so many great people you can meet. And just the short time that I've like somewhat been in the racing industry and had a year last year where I visited more tracks than I have before, met more people than I have before, did so many different things, just kind of to get my feet wet in every sort of, you know, spectrum of the racing industry. It's so cool that even, you know, like a lot of people don't know, even that we're not behind the wheel, we're not driving, we're not race car drivers, but we're in the racing industry. And I think it's just such an amazing thing that I hope that, you know, I get to continue in years in the future.
I'm right there with you, RJ. You know, I go to, you know, a place like Michigan. You know, I never took it for granted that I got to sit up in that booth and talk to those race fans. I could remember being one of those race fans and just wishing,
Yeah.
you know, wouldn't it be so cool to be down in the infield? You know,
Yep.
it was just amazing to drive through that tunnel the first time as someone who worked inside the sport. You know, I never in a million years thought that was going to be even possible. And you know, you just meet the right people and you kind of put your faith in the process and let things, you know, I'm a believer that things work out the way they do for a reason. And you know, you put that effort into it and good things usually happen. And you know, I'm like I said, I don't think I could retrace those steps. And even if I could, I don't think anybody would believe it. But you know, you just find a way to say yes and meet as many people as you can and good things generally will happen.
For sure. So unfortunately, we've ran out of time. Charlie, we want to thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and the ability to talk to you. This was truly an awesome conversation.
Well, if I don't know something, Ben, I just make it up. So
you do it with such confidence, though, that we have to believe you.
Yeah.
Right. You know, you just sound like you know what you're talking about and get away with it.
Exactly. So,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
no,
man,
seriously,
thank you
thank
so
you so
much.
much. So
No, guys, thank you for having me on. I greatly appreciate it and appreciate your coverage of the ARCA Menard series and our platform. And, you know, anytime you want to come to one of our races, just drop me a note and we'll figure out a way to make it happen. But you guys have a great 2023 and a great racing season. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.
you as well.
Yes,
Can't
sir.
wait for
Happy
it.
New Year, everybody. And thanks for watching another episode of Off the Record.